Today we're with David Arpin, CEO and President of Arpin Van Lines, and Conrad Swanson, Senior Vice President of Agency Development. Good morning.
Morning.
Thanks for joining Mark's Moving TV.
Nice to be here.
Thanks for
Nice to
having
have
us.
you here.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
So I understand Arpin Van Lines has been around 100 years or more. Tell me, how did Arpin Van Lines start?
Well, it was a mistake.
A good mistake.
A good mistake. So my grandfather was a French-Canadian immigrant, came down from Quebec, migrated to the Providence area, and when he came down, they had a couple of horse and buggies to bring the family. They had 13 kids. So when they got here, it just kind of made sense to do things with the horse and buggy because not everybody had one back then, and that was in the late 1800s. So they started delivering coal in the winter with one of the horse and buggies, and the other one was used to deliver ice in the summertime. And at some point, someone asked my great-grandfather, who didn't speak English, he spoke French, to move a piano that they were donating to the church. And that's really how the moving part of it got started. He moved the piano, and then he decided that, he should put on one of them moving and cartage. And he started to move people in and around the Oneyville area of Providence. So that's really how the company got started.
So you've actually been in the Providence area since day one.
Yes. They were there probably from the late 1800s. We have records to go back to the year 1900.
So it went from literally horse and buggy to straight trucks were the first type of trucks, or open state trucks?
Yeah. Actually, we have pictures of some of the old straight trucks when they first came out. I've got some pictures in the office. You've probably seen them that go back to 1914. The trucks that we have pictures of, and then from there, obviously, as you know, in the 40s, people started using tractor trailers, and my grandfather bought a tractor trailer in the late 40s.
So how old were you when you actually got involved in the company?
So I was probably, I used to, get dragged into the office to sweep the warehouse, I think, when I was 10.
And what was your second job after the sweeping?
Well, you don't want to know about that.
What was your third job?
Well, second job was actually shooting rats in the basement, but we won't put that on that.
So we'll talk more about sweeping the
Yes,
floor.
right.
A bit,
All right.
bit
So
more
what I eventually ended up doing is learning how to stack lots. This is before containerized ship. That we would containerize things in the warehouse. We used to stack the furniture, free stack it, cover it all in paper. So I learned how to do that when I was probably 12.
So I imagine it was difficult going to school and then having to do your homework and then come to the building, the warehouse?
No. I only did the work in the summertime when I was out of school. My mom was very strict about going to school, so when we went to school, we went to school. During the school year, we'd go down on Saturdays to help out at the warehouse, but.
What was a typical work day? How many hours a day did you work back then?
So whatever my father worked, because we lived in Warwick. So back then that was before Route 95. We would go in at 8 o'clock, and whatever time he went home, we went home.
So it's a great story, but did you ever think about going into another industry or not? Did you ever?
Yeah, actually I did. So when I got out of college, I thought about going to law school. And I drove a truck after I got out of college for a while. And what happened is my dad got sick. And I went into the office one day, and I wanted to know what my assignment was. And the dispatchers told me that my father was the only one who made those assignments. And I'm like, he's in the hospital, and he's not walking in that door anytime soon. So somebody better make some decisions. And I actually went back there, a couple of guys that were there, Ray Lambert and Ray Lucier, and I just started looking over this stuff, and I've been there ever since.
Well, it's quite a success story. I really admire the success that your family has created. It's quite an organization, and Mark's Moving and Storage is very proud to be an agent for Arpin Van Lines. So,
and we're proud to have you guys as an
thank
agent.
you.
You're a great
Conrad,
agent.
how did you get involved?
I started much like David. My brother worked in the industry, and I started summers just as a helper. Went through college, kind of helped pay my college tuition through working at Arpin, and left the industry for a few years after college, tried to take advantage of the degree, and came back. And actually, I loved being on the trucks, and so I worked 11 years on the trucks and had a chance to take over general manager of Arpin, Rhode Island, and that's really where I started inside, and that was 15 years ago.
And again, never look back, affiliate yourself with the best, and just stayed with it. Something about this industry. I know I started in 1979 and never looked back. You can't leave, apparently, once you you get involved. So tell me how things have changed over the years. So we know that you had ice, you had coal, then they moved furniture. How did the whole agency system? So we're an agent for Arpin Van Lines. How did that whole agency relationship begin?
So if you're running a business and you want to operate interstate all over the country, it's very difficult to do it if you just have one facility. And it's also very difficult to open facilities in a lot of different places. It's very expensive to do. So it's easier to affiliate yourself with an agent in another market. So when I started, we basically did military work. 90% of what we did was military work, and then we had a fairly large local operation in Rhode Island. So I saw that if we were going to expand nationally, that we would have to do that through agents, because again, to open our own facility in Chicago, you have to buy a building, hire a lot of people. So can you imagine doing that in the 50 largest cities in the United States? It would cost you a fortune. So we pretty much copied what Allied Van Lines and Mayflower and United were doing, and looked for agent affiliates that were not part of the major van lines back then. And we were actually able to do that and grow ourselves into one of the 5 major van lines.
So how many agents are there now for Arpin Van Lines?
So we have about 150 agents around the country.
And I know things are changing all the time. Is the trend to pretty much stay at that number, to add agents, to have fewer agents? What is the current model that Arpin Van Lines is looking at?
We're always looking to add good agents to the system. You can't have too many good agents. Geographically, if you've got an agent in Seattle and you have a job in Spokane, it's a long way. So it's better to have an agent in Seattle and an agent in Spokane. So we would, eventually like to have an agent in every major city in the United States.
So with technology, I know that Arpin Van Lines is very helpful to us, particularly with licensing, with education really as well. And we find all of the services and products you have available very valuable to us. But with technology and the internet, there's so much information, and there are so many other ways that people can get information. Has technology made it more difficult for you to find quality agents?
I wouldn't say it's made it more difficult. The agency family continues to grow based on need, basically. The industry has changed. I mean, the hardest thing about what we do, as you well know, is to attract, train, and keep good people. I mean, we're in an industry where most people, if they were asked, they don't want their kids to grow up to be movers. So, it's difficult to get somebody that wants to be a mover, to train them, and then to keep them happy doing it. It's a hard job. So it's that constant reinforcement of training that we've developed, a pretty good training program.
You've developed a tremendous training program. We utilize it here at our driver meetings, and we're constantly on the phone asking you for guidance. So it's a very valuable benefit.
As a matter of fact, the American Moving and Storage Association is trying to get us to somehow donate our training program for the moving industry nationally. But we've spent, as you probably know, millions of dollars.
So you may want to share it, but you may not want to donate it.
Exactly. Yeah, share it. Somebody could go online and buy some of our training. But we've spent millions of dollars developing that, our own technology and the training program.
But it shows, because we've utilized it, and the men, when we play it, on the big screen, they learn and they pay a lot of attention. Conrad, when you try and acquire a new agent, what's the process? How does that even begin?
Well, first we look for a need in a city that we might need an agent. And
So it usually begins by geographically, where do you need the agent?
so if yes, when we're seeking an agent, we'll look at the geographic area, and then we try to find agents that are motivated to become an Arpin agent and that do quality work. I mean, we do a lot of research on the agents that we recruit, and we want to make sure that they're going to be able to represent us the way that we want to be represented, and that they're going to be able to take the tools that we give them and use them on the street and provide quality service for the end customer.
So you probably have a lot of people that would like to affiliate themselves with you, but maybe just aren't a high enough quality to meet your standards.
Yeah, it's probably about 10% of the agents that have interest in becoming an agent. We end up being able to do so.
But in a way that again says something about the van line. It says that you're only dealing and offering and growing with the best. Tell me more about an agent. I know that we do a lot of COD work. We move a lot of people with our own trucks, our own men within the country. But I know that Arpin Van Line and some of its agents have a lot of other services that are offered. Can you just sort of list some of those, like the international and the crating and all the other services that you offer?
Yeah, really, the household moving industry is really only busy for 4 months now. So, and it's getting shorter and shorter. So our agents really need to be diversified and be able to handle a lot of different types of work. So hotel projects, installations for storefronts, for doing hospital work, doing office moving, doing crating, doing such as you do the remediation for smoke and fire problems, and then also agents will do international work, which is a little bit more year-round work, and that's kind of a specialized skill as well.
So tell me a little bit more about the international work. We have processed a few shipments with your guidance, but I know that Arpin International is a very strong player in the industry. So tell me a little bit more about where the offices are and how that whole process works.
So we got into the international business almost by chance. I got a call from the chairman of Hasbro Toys, wanted us to move somebody from London to New York that they were hiring. As we did all of their domestic moving business, and he just assumed we did international moves as well. So we figured out how to do it, and that's really was our introduction to the international moving world. And now that was in 1990, I believe. We now have offices in Europe and Asia. We have an office in Dubai, an office in Australia. So we basically move people all around the world. And as Conrad just said, it's probably a little more reliable business in that the domestic moving business, as you know, is so heavy in June, July, August, and September, and then it slows down. So it's hard to keep that good year-round help when your business slows down for 8 months. Where the international moving industry is busy, I would say, almost all year round. There doesn't seem to be as much focus on moving when the kids are out of school, because they're actually
Right.
going to another country. For example, if someone's moving from Hong Kong to Paris, they don't seem to really care about the school year as much.
Got
So it's been a great a benefit to ourselves and to our agents and really to our customers.
So you'd mentioned that Hasbro sort of forced you into it, or that
Yeah.
happened to be the account at the time. Do you perform these moves just as they're affiliated with corporations, or do you do, if a family is moving and it has nothing to do
Well,
with
for
business?
anybody, but primarily we do corporate relocation. We also do some military, international, and COD. But the bulk of what we do, I'd say 85% of what we do is large corporations moving their executives around the world, which there's a lot of that. Now that the world has become really a global economy, if you don't have people in Asia and Europe, it's really hard to do business there.
Right. So I know, going back to the local business or the domestic business, there's a driver shortage in America. It's difficult to get drivers to be away from home for weeks at a time. A lot of the people they don't want to do it anymore. So there seems to be a trend now we used to call it crate and freight, putting things in boxes domestically, similar to when they're shipped internationally. I believe the Arpin Express is the division. So tell me a little bit more about why we're doing it more with Arpin Express, or that business is growing, and exactly how it works.
So the reason that it's growing is that most of our trailers are 53 feet. So if you're going to move, let's say you're going to move from Boston here to San Francisco, and you've got 2,000 pounds, it's going to take, you know, it could take 30 to 35 days to put it on a truck. And it's, you know, you can put 26,000 pounds on a truck. 2,000 pounds is a very small percentage of that load. So it's going to take a long time to get there. And in the meantime, let's say you're going out to San Francisco to get a new job. Your new employer is probably going to have to put you into a living facility, whether it's a hotel or a motel or a temporary living assignment, and pay for all of that, pay for your meals and all of that until it shows up. Using Arpin Express, we can have an agent like Mark's Movers get out to the house, pack and load it, bring it back, put it in a shipping container. We can put it on a freight truck and have it there in 7 days. So it allows us the opportunity to get your goods there a lot faster and more efficiently rather than putting it on a truck and have you wait 30 to 40 days for it to get there. So it's a need and a niche that we're filling by using Arpin Express.
We've handled a few of those in partnership with Arpin Express, and sometimes I would look back and say, why did we ever even want to put it on a moving truck? Because for all the reasons you just said, it was easier, it was quicker, the customer was much happier. In some cases, it was less expensive. It was just all positives. But as time goes on, it appears that all of us are going to be doing more and more of those type of shipments.
And you're right, and that's somewhat a response to the driver shortage. And when you think about it, I started out as Conrad did, as a driver. And so if you're trying to have a family and you're on the road for, let's say, 200 days a year, it's really difficult. For example, the other day I got a complaint from a customer. Our driver was on the phone too long. But the driver had been away from home for 65 days. And he had a daughter that was starting out in college, and he had a son who was playing football. So he was talking to his wife and his kids about what's going on in his life. And the customer got mad because they thought he was goofing off, but he was trying to live his life. So really, the long and the short of that is that there will be more of that because it's harder and harder to get drivers and people that want to live like that. It's a difficult job.
Because I think sometimes, unfortunately, the consumer doesn't really understand what a sacrifice a lot of these drivers are making. It's not just about throwing some furniture on a truck and pressing a button and have it appear in California. There's a lot that goes into it, and 65 days away from home, that's a long time to be away from home. That's really a sacrifice that I think a lot of people just don't understand is being made so that their family doesn't have to make any sacrifices, so that the customer, the consumer, can be set up in their new home and get back to business as quickly as possible.
And if you think about what it takes to be a van operator or a driver, a long distance driver particularly, so they've got to know the equipment, they've got to know how to handle the tractor, which is a large mechanical piece of equipment. They've got to know all the ins and outs of how to hook up the trailer, take the trailer off, all of the intricacies and the mechanics of the trailer. They have to know how to handle a crew. They have to know how to handle a customer. You know, they say that moving is the third most stressful event in a person's life, behind death of a loved one and divorce. So we actually get people at one of the worst times in their life. They're very stressed out because they're moving to a new city, either leaving their friends, their family, going to a new place, so the whole family is under stress. So the driver has to be a psychiatrist, a mechanic, a business manager, and then he's got to manage the move to make sure that everything gets packed in boxes properly, everything gets loaded on the truck so nothing gets broken in transit. It takes a very sophisticated businessman to run and be a driver for a moving company. It's a very difficult job, and it's a dying breed. So Arpin Express and services like that are coming more to the forefront now.
Well, it's interesting. In any business, you hear about companies went out of business. Well, why did companies go out of business? Because things changed and the business didn't. So when we're talking business in general, we're always preaching to people, you can't keep doing things the same way or you won't survive. And that's one of the great things about Arpin Van Lines is that you're quite innovative. You're always doing whatever the latest and the best thing is. And instead of saying, oh, we can't get drivers and we're not going to be able to handle shipments, you develop a very good system, the Arpin Express, and you change. And as a result of that change, you have the continued success. Now, I know some van lines have gone out of business, over the past decade or so, and maybe your ability to make those changes and do what consumers need has allowed you to continue. There's also been a bit of consolidation, and I know from time to time, the van line, Arpin Van Lines, just as Mark's Moving might or someone else, you say, hey, what should I do? Should I merge with another van line? So how do you constantly evaluate that? Because it must be something that's always on the table.
Yeah, and you're right. There are a lot of, if I were to go back 30, 35 years, we were certainly one of the smaller van lines, and a lot of the major van lines disappeared. I mean, if you look in my office, I have all of these trucks of companies
Van lines that once existed.
Yeah, Transamerica, Continental, Republic, Mayflower, in effect, doesn't really exist anymore. It's owned by United Van
Right.
Lines. I mean, so Global Van Lines, who you knew very well,
Yes.
is owned by Serva, who owns Allied and North American. So there has been a lot of consolidation and a lot of bankruptcies. In the last few years, American Red Ball went out of business, Grable went out of business, A. Arnold went out of business. Bill Arnold was friends with my dad 55 years ago. So there's been that and the consolidation. And that's probably due to the fact that at one point, 20% of the population moved every year. And that was according to the American Moving and Storage Association, their statistics. It's down to about 9% of the population. So what we had, in terms of number of moves, is less than half of what we had 20 years ago. So you're right, that evaluation goes on, and if you don't change with the times and figure out innovative ways to stay in business, you don't make it. So we're constantly doing that.
So I know another one of the innovations Arpin was involved with was the virtual survey.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that. That seems to be an interesting product.
So yeah, the way we've done things for 100 years, right, is to go to the customer's home with a tablet and plug everything in as you go through the house. So this is a chair, that's a table. Come up with the cubic feet and a weight estimate. So now we can actually do it virtually. We can have you take your cell phone, right? You can download our app, walk around your house like this to take a picture of everything, open the closets, go out to the garage, the backyard. Everything will be compiled. And they actually got a couple of missed calls. Hopefully that's not customers.
They get forwarded to someone
Good.
in the other office. They're probably booked and maybe even loaded by now.
Yeah, perfect. So we get you download it back to us, goes into a computer system, it compiles all of the cubic feet of everything that the camera has seen, and then we can turn that into a weight and an estimate. And we don't have to go to your home. You just have to have this video and send it to us. We don't have to have a car on the road. We don't have to insure it. It's not polluting the air. I mean, it is a great advancement in technology, and we were part of the team that developed it and use it extensively today.
So some people do still like to have a person, a human, come out to their home, and Mark's Moving and your other Arpin agents can do that. But for those that don't want that or don't have the time or just are more into technology, that is a fantastic feature service that's available. And they can get that by calling Mark's Moving and Storage, and in partnership with you, we'll arrange for that virtual survey.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Conrad, the agents, I know a lot of them, and again, they're very high quality. Our interaction has been only positive with every single one of them. What advice do you have for the agents? We talk about having to change. What makes a good agency? How do you make sure that? How do I make sure? How do the other agents make sure they stay at the top of their game?
Well, it's always being on top of your game and being training your guys, pounding the point home that the customer is the ultimate person who pays your salary, and you want to make them happy. Really, customer service is the be all and end all in this industry. We don't have a product that we leave people with. It's just a feeling. So the guys who knock on the door are really the ones who provide the service that we demand and that our customers demand. And that's really the key, above all else, is just provide quality service to your customer, and customers can be fellow agents as well.
So it's funny you talk about the quality. Today we had a sales meeting. We were talking about touch points, and it is so important for all the agents, whether it's a box delivery, whether it's the individual showing up at the house, or the person on the phone explaining how to do the virtual survey, or the driver making sure he puts down floor protection. Every single one of those touch points just has to be perfect. And again, I compliment your development of the agents, because they all seem to do the right things. And that really does differentiate Arpin Van Lines and Mark's Moving from the competition, because we're so focused on doing it right. You eliminate a lot of problems by just planning properly in advance, and also knowing what to do, which goes back to the education and all of the training that you have for us. So on the touch points, I know that you're very concerned with the touch points as well. Elaborate on that a little bit, if you would.
Yeah, so we have a team that is responsible for a move, and starting with the salesperson who makes the sale. But then it goes to the people in operations that have to plan the details of the move, to make sure that the driver and the crew have the right packing material, know where they're going, what time they're supposed to be there. And then they have to have a plan for the move. It's not you just show up and things start to happen. The driver has to know that, listen, I'm going to have you pack because you're really good at packing china and dishes. You're going to go do this. You're really good and fast at doing things, so I'm going to start you in the basement to clean all that up, and I'm going to go upstairs and start at the bedrooms because I'm really good at that. So you've got to have the team plan, and you've got to execute that plan. It's kind of like a football team. If you miss your block, I'm going to get tackled and not. So if you do a bad job in the kitchen or the dining room, or I do a bad job with the artwork in the house, it's a failed move. So all of those touch points have to be thought about in advance and planned for, and make sure, again, you've got the right material and the right crew, so that, as you go through that customer's home, it's done professionally and done to a T, basically. Because then on destination, if it's all packed properly and loaded properly, it's a lot easier to unload and deliver it and get everything back in its place the way it's supposed to be, and to make that customer happy and to walk away and them say, gee, that was a great move. I'm going to use those guys again. And that's really what it's all about, is those repeat customers. So we've got some clients that we've had for 40 years since I've been there. And, if we lost some of them, we would lose a huge amount of business. So that kind of repetitive service delivery is what we're all about, and trying to deliver on every move.
Well, again, all that success doesn't happen by itself, and those touch points, it's almost like you're building a house, you have a blueprint, and you follow each step in that blueprint, and what do you know, you have a beautiful house. Well, you've developed a blueprint so that at the end of the day, you have a perfectly executed move. And those are some damn good blueprints, because there's a lot of happy customers out there, and I know that Arpin Van Lines really shares that same thought as Mark's Moving, where we used to say a customer needs to be 100% satisfied. That was fine. And now we say, well, that's not good enough. They truly have to love us. 100% is not good enough anymore.
Yeah.
The customer has to truly love us. And I know that you don't just process a move and then hope it went well. You have a very thorough process of checking back with each and every one of the shippers, the people that you move or we move for you, to make sure they're happy. And in that rare occasion when they're not, you don't just take the paper and file it away. You do what we do. You just stick with them, and you make sure that they are happy. So we're very proud to be a partner of Arpin Van Lines, and we really appreciate everything you do for us. And quite frankly, it's helped it's helped build our company. It helps Mark's Moving and Storage to be successful by being affiliated with you. So I appreciate everything you do for us, and I certainly appreciate your time here today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you again,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you, Mark. We're happy to be here.